Hey folks, you know I take my trail camera intel pretty seriously. It's a huge part of how I build my hunting strategy, and I'm always looking for gear that just flat out works. Stuff I can rely on. Backed by solid people and the best customer support in the business. That's exactly why I run Tactacam Reveal cell cameras. Whether you're just getting started or you're a full-blown data junkie like me, they've got a camera to fit your budget and your hunting style. My go-to currently is the Reveal 3.0 series with fully integrated GPS. These things are dead simple to set up. Less fiddling, more scouting and hunting. And they run on most major service providers and will automatically connect you to the strongest signal in your area. So no more hiking to the top of a ridge just to realize you've got the wrong service provider. Been there, not fun. Here's the kicker. You don't even need an SD card. That means fewer trips in, less pressure on your spots, and more real-time intel sent straight to your phone. And if you pair it with a Reveal solar panel or a lithium cartridge, you can keep those cameras running longer and spend more time doing what actually matters. Scouting new ground, dialing in a setup, or maybe, just maybe, finally cleaning the garage like you told your wife you would before the season started. Don't just take my word for it. Check out Tactacam Reveal at tactacam.com. Tactacam. Everything you need to take your hunting to the next level. Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Oscio gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Oscio's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Oscio. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. If you're like me, e-scouting isn't just part of the process, it is the process. And nobody's doing it better than Spartan Forge. This is a veteran-owned company that built the only science-based scouting platform on real GPS collar data and artificial intelligence to predict deer movement. But where it really shines is with their imagery. Spartan Forge now has a high-res UAV coverage for 80% of the whitetail states, down to 5-centimeter detail. That means you can see trails, old logging roads, cuts, even subtle vegetation changes that most apps completely miss. And if you really want to get nerdy, their LiDAR layer breaks right through the canopy so you can see the forest floor. Gives you some visibility to those hidden draws, ditches that big bucks absolutely love to live in. Add in historical wind data and a desktop-only features like Eagle Eye and Cyber Scout, and you've got the most advanced hunting app out there. Start your risk-free 14-day trial today at spartanforge.ai.
Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Tactacam Reveal Cellular Cameras. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 468. And today we're talking about gear with a focus on everyday carry type items for truck camping and being mobile that you might just be able to find some deals on this holiday season. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. Today, we're going to do a little different of a podcast. If you're just listening to this, the audio version, if you have the ability to, you might want to watch the video. I'll do the best I can to explain things for the audio folks. But you can watch the video on YouTube or Spotify. So what we're going to do today is a little different than what we've done in the past. It's going to be a solo session. This time of year, of course, we're getting into the holiday season, so lots of companies are running deals. You're looking for maybe gifts, or you might be looking just to pick yourself something up. And so I figured what I would do is I would go through kind of my kind of key pieces of my gear that if I had to keep things, these are the things that I would keep in my kit if I had to be limited. What this isn't is people sent me messages and want to know what kind of gear I'm using because they didn't. And if you hear someone say that on a video that, hey, I'm doing this video because a bunch of people sent me messages, probably not true, right? The internet is out there. ChatGPT is out there. They have a lot of ways to find information. It's probably just more of a setup for people to do a video to promote products to you. And that's not what this is today. We're certainly going to go over some stuff that I use from some partners that I work with, but we're going to have a bunch of other stuff too with companies that I have no affiliation with and do no work with, that I just picked up the gear and use it because it fits what I like to do. And even with the folks that I work with, I've tried a bunch of different products and there's seem to be just what works for me. And so we'll highlight a few of those. What this isn't is a bow review. You're not going to see any bows. It's not even really a gear review. You're not going to see any saddles. You're not going to see any sticks. You're not going to see any tree stands. You're not going to see any of those types of things because there's plenty of information out there for you. Mobile hunting, of course, has exploded the past 5-10 years. There's tons of companies making a lot of really good gear. You're really kind of splitting hairs. It's more of a comfort thing and what you prefer. So I figured I wouldn't kind of focus on those. What I would focus on were maybe some of the things that we overlook. And more specifically, they're things for me that probably 5 years ago, I didn't think much about. But in the past several years, I started kind of refining my kit because I've stopped changing as much stuff. Like I stopped kind of changing a lot of things that I use year to year. And if I find something that really works for me, I just kind of stick with it. Even if it's old, if it's beat up, like whatever the case is, I just kind of continue to use it because it fits what I need it to do. And so all these pieces kind of help me either stay in the timber longer or as long as possible, or it helps me be as mobile as possible, as lightweight as possible, or it helps me in being mobile in terms of my planning to travel to hunt. Because as you guys know, if you listen to the show for any length of time, I do a fair amount of hunting. Last year was chasing a specific deer. I spent a lot of time away from my home in my trailer, and then did the same thing this year. I just got done on a 3-week trip. And so there's some pieces whenever I'm not close to home that I really kind of have to have, that just gives me comfort or peace of mind, so to speak. And so, that's where we'll start. We'll start with the things that I think are kind of like more my everyday carry things. It might even be things you think about that I probably just kind of keep in my truck or keep kind of close to me, no matter if I'm traveling at home or close to home, or whether I'm on a more extended trip. All right. So let's start with stuff that I just typically keep in my truck. And you might think like, man, it's a lot of shit to keep in your truck. This isn't even doesn't even scratch the surface of what I keep in my truck. But early in the season, especially before I'm starting to really travel out of state, there's some places that are somewhat near my home that are a couple hours that I like to hunt. And so I'm usually doing like 2 to 3 day trips there, either to scout or to hunt. And I'm just truck camping. And so my truck has to kind of act as my home base, and I've got to be able to basically live out of it. It's typically like a 3-day situation. I usually don't use the truck for any longer than 3 days just because it gets to be a little bit hectic. I can't quite get enough stuff in it to make it comfortable, and just kind of turns into a mess. So 3 days is about the max for the truck. But the one thing that I use, and I actually got this when I was hunting out west in Idaho, and we were remote backcountry, and I needed something to kind of keep water. And I have a Grail kind of water filter system that I use, but I obviously didn't want to be trying to have to find water every day. So I needed a way to kind of have water at camp and be able to refill water bottles and stuff like that. So I'd only have to find water every couple of days. I ended up picking up this Mountain Safety Research 4-liter water bag. It did awesome in the backcountry. It's made out of like this really hard, kind of like Kevlar type material. So it's really hard to pierce on, sticks or whatever the case is. And it did really well for me on that hunt. 4 liters of water is a good bit of water. And so typically what I do at the beginning of hunting season is I just fill this thing and I throw it in the back seat, underneath the back seat in my truck. Actually, this thing doesn't ever really leave my truck, just because if you get stranded somewhere or whatever, you need water. I just don't typically like to be anywhere where I don't have access to clean water, whether it's for drinking or whatever the case is. But it really comes in handy when I'm truck camping, because I can basically fill this at the beginning of the year. I just kind of toss it in there, and I know I always have water in there, whether I'm hunting local to me and I get to wherever I'm going to be hunting and I realize I forgot to fill my water bottle, or I come out in the evening, and finished off my water and I need some water, or maybe you kill a deer and you need to hike back in to get it, come out, get your kill kit, whatever the case is. You need to take some extra water in with you because you're going to be parched from dragging or meat packing or whatever the case is. So I always keep this stocked in my truck. That way, whether I'm hunting local or whether I'm hunting just a couple hours away, or whenever I was just in the plains, this thing was in the back of my truck the entire time. That way, it's like I really never had to think about water. Water scarcity was not really ever something I had to worry about, or something I spent time kind of hand-wringing over. I knew I always had this in the back seat. So this is a Mountain Safety Research 4-liter bag, and it's probably one of my favorite pieces of gear that I bought in the recent past. I forget how much it was. I don't think it was much more than like $50 or something like that, if that much. The next piece of gear that we'll take a look at real quick is my binos and bino harness. So I've gone through a bunch of different kind of bino harness setups, to be quite honest with you. I've gone back and forth between like 10 by 42 glass, 8 by 42 glass, 8 by 32 glass, full kind of chest rig to like a minimalist harness. And what I've kind of settled on the past 2 years, and I really like it, and I basically use this all season, is basically these Hawk optics that are 8 by 42. And then this, I believe it's called a Rick Young Outdoors minimalist bino harness. The reason why I like this is because when I throw it on, right, it's really low profile and out of the way, especially if I'm one stick or climbing a tree. A lot of times the bivy would get caught and scrape up against the tree and I'm making noise. And so with this, you can just kind of wrap the harness itself around us and it'll clamp it tight to your chest, right? So that way when you're climbing, there's nothing really flapping out in front of you. It's a little lower profile and it's just a lot cleaner getting in and out of the tree, is one of the main reasons. You might be looking at this saying, where's my rangefinder? This year with the longbow, I had a little less of a need for a rangefinder. Still used one, but the reason why I like these Hawk 8x42s is because they actually have a built-in rangefinder in it. So using this set of glass, I was able to get rid of an extra pouch that was typically on this, which was honestly the big deterrent to using this more minimalist bino harness, because there was not a convenient way to kind of connect my my rangefinder. It just always kind of seemed to flap around. And so whenever I picked up these Hawk binos and they had a rangefinder built into it, I was able to ditch that and just made my entire setup so much cleaner. I ended up using this setup all of last year for the most part, like the bino harness and stuff. And then I used it all year this year. I played around with a little bit with the bivy, but it just gets in the way, and I prefer just for things to be a little bit more sleek. The nice thing is too, this comes with a pouch, right? And a cover. So, you might be thinking, you want to protect your glass. Totally get it. I'm pretty hard on my gear, so I don't protect it all the time, but it does come with a pouch, which is really easy to just kind of toss on top of this. That way, if it's raining or whatever the case is, you can kind of keep dirt off of it. If you're climbing a tree, if you're somewhere where it's dusty, or if it's starting to rain or whatever the case is, you can cover it. So this is really kind of like my bino setup that I use every single hunt. The only thing that I added to it in this, if you don't have one of these, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. I just prefer to do this. My buddy actually makes this from Drawn Archery. It's a windicator, so I can put, all my milkweed essentially in this little piece, and it's always right here. It's connected to my binos, and I'm good to go. So I've got my glass, I've got my rangefinder, and I've got my windicator here, all on this setup. Super small, super sleek, and it does the exact job I needed to do and doesn't get in my way. So this is another piece that's with me all the time. We'll move to this piece here. So you're going to find out that I'm not a sucker, but like with water, I'm also always making sure that I have enough power and enough power banks and juice to make sure I'm charging my phone or whatever the case is, right? Especially when you're using like your Spartan 4 app or whatever the case is on your phone. We're often using that as our main kind of device for navigating, right? And so beyond being able to text or whatever the case is, like that's the thing that we're really using to scout, mark things, find our way to wherever we're headed to hunt, find our way out, whatever the case is, right? And so power becomes, paramount to be able to do all those things. And so this is the second one of these that I've had. This is the brand's called Tough Tested. And you can charge it with a regular kind of charger. It comes with a charger. Has a light on it, which I don't really ever use, but it's charged also by solar. So you can lay it out in the sun and charge it whenever you're not using it. The previous one used to have like a carabiner on it, and I really liked that, but I actually hooked it in a tree to let it charge, and then left it in that tree, and it's several hours away from me. So for all intents and purposes, I lost that one, picked up another one. I think these are like $100 roughly, but they take a beating. I've left it out in the rain. I've carried it in Idaho with me in the backcountry. The previous one that I've had this one for about a year, and you can get multiple charges off of this. So if it's something that you want to take into the backcountry with you or whatever the case is, or you're going on, an out of state hunt and you just need a little extra battery juice or whatever the case is, This is a great pickup. It's going to give you multiple charges on your phone. You can charge, basically anything that has a USB connect. So if you're using small cameras or whatever the case is, they can even charge a computer off of this if you need to, if you have the right hookups. But I kind of limit this to mainly just my phone and maybe some batteries and stuff like that, or run my lights in the back of my truck, in the cap of my truck whenever when I'm camping. I'll put some string lights up, and this will be kind of what I use to power my light source. So this thing goes with me, is always in my truck from the beginning of hunting season. Typically it's even in there, post hunting season. I just throw it in my console or in my center console and let it in there. And it's always there and can need it that way, even if I'm traveling somewhere or whatever the case is, I'm flying somewhere, and I'm going to be on a long flight. I can toss this in my bag and have plenty of power. The next thing that is something that's always with me, always in my truck, is my Garmin, right? So this is something that's always in my truck, but not something I always necessarily use. I always like to have it in my truck because I never know at times, especially if I'm going somewhere new, if I'm going to be in an area that's going to have cell service or not, right? And I hunt solo like 99% of the time, right? And so this is just like a peace of mind that I have to be able to text my wife and let her know if I'm in an area that doesn't have cell service. I'll text her in the morning with this saying, hey, I'm in my tree or I'm at my hunting destination, wherever I'm going to be. And then when it gets dark out and she's expecting me to be heading back to wherever I'm camping or heading back home or whatever the case is, I'll just text her with this and say, hey, I'm back at the truck. Not just that, but it acts as a secondary kind of backup for any kind of navigation as well. That way, if my phone happens to die, I lose it, it breaks. We rely a lot on our phones for things. And like if something happens to it and just, it's technology, so it could just crap out on you at any time. I have a backup piece to where I can navigate myself out of an area if I'm not familiar with the spot that I'm in, or I can get a text out, to let my wife know that I'm good to go. I also have programmed in here Big Buck Down. So if I'm hunting with buddies, I can send them a text of Big Buck Down with a GPS coordinate, and they know exactly where I'm at to help me get the deer out. Also, especially if I'm headed out west, I definitely take this. Obviously, cell service is a lot more limited whenever you're in the backcountry like that, but it has an SOS button. That way, if I get into a bad spot, I can't get myself out, or I'm lost, or whatever the case is, or I'm hurt, I can hit that SOS and it'll send out a ping, and I can alert folks that this is my location. I'm in a bad spot and I'm going to need some assistance. And so this is just a little peace of mind. This is actually the InReach Explorer. This is a very old version. I've had this for years. I just haven't updated it because it still works. But they make a smaller version of this. They used to be kind of expensive. I think now you can pick them up for just like a $200 or something like that. And so if you're doing a lot of backcountry hunting or solo hunting, definitely worth having. The next thing I have that's an everyday kind of piece, especially when I'm on hunting trips. This is just the old standby trusty Jetboil. There's nothing fancy about it. You got your engine in here for the most part, or where your flame's going to come out of, and basically a stand and where you're putting your water essentially. This thing is basically how I eat and get calories in all hunting season, whether I'm out west or whether I'm hunting, in the plains for 3 weeks, or whether I'm just in the mountains, north of me for a couple of days at a time, or whatever the case is. This is always either in my truck or in my trailer. Typically keep it in my truck until I'm ready to do long trips. Because I have a go bag in my truck, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But these things are just worth their weight in gold. You can, I'll use this to make my dehydrated meals. I'll use a bunch of different stuff for that, whether it's Peak Refuel, or typically Peak Refuel and Mountain House are the two that I typically use. They're just the two that agree with me the best. I'll take some coffee along, right? So this is really like my kitchen by and large for how I cook and, for most of my meals. I use oatmeal whenever I'm on these trips. So I just boil some water in the morning. Some of it's for oatmeal, some of it's for coffee, and then I'm good to go. So if you don't have one of these and you're looking to do like travel hunts and stuff like that, man, this just makes, one of the big time sucks on these trips is just figuring out how you're going to eat and get enough calories in, and using one of these and having one of these kind of always with you is just, it's worth its weight in gold. I've even started carrying it in the truck with me whenever I'm driving around, like when I'm in the plains and I'm glassing. Like I'll just throw a bag of ramen noodles in my go bag, and I'll have this in there. That way, if I get hungry in the middle of the day, I don't have to try to find, a gas station or a convenience store to pick up something to eat real quick. It's like I just stop along the road, boil some water, throw it in, eat the ramen, hit the road, and I'm off, back on the hunt or back on the glass or whatever the case is. And so this thing here, man, is just, like it's the thing that probably really stirs the drink on my travel hunts. So the other piece here, I just mentioned go bag. This is really just a waterproof, dry bag essentially. And this one's made by Wise Owl. Like there's a bunch of different brands that make them. This is just the ones that I picked up. It's the same brand of the hammock that I have in my trailer, and it's worked really well. So I was like, let me try their dry bags. What I typically use this for is if I'm headed out west, I'll throw my food in this. These usually come in 3 sizes. There's like a small, medium, and large. This is kind of the medium size. And I'll throw like all my dehydrated meals, all like my snacks and food and coffee and all that stuff in these, and that it'll go in my, in my larger kind of frame pack whenever I'm out west. But for the purposes of just, East Coast or Midwest whitetail hunting, what I'll do is I'll fill this up with always keep like 3, maybe 4 dehydrated meals in here. I'll keep like 10 to 12 packs of oatmeal in here, and then a handful of things I like for snacks, whether it's RX bars, meat sticks, whatever the case is. And then I will prep this right before hunting season, throw it in the back of my truck along with my Jetboil in here. That way, whenever I'm looking at the weather, and I know that I'm going to go hunt, and say I'm going to go north to the mountain, right, to hunt the mountain piece. And the biggest thing that's a deterrent to get out to hunt in some of those travel situations like that is like, man, I got to get everything ready. I got to throw all this stuff in the truck and stuff like that. So what I do is I just try to eliminate the pack factor, right? And so I know if I'm going to leave on a Friday to try to go up, or if the weather's getting right on a Wednesday and I'm going to go up and work remote from the truck and like hunt in the mornings and evenings, I know all I have to do is basically throw the mattress in the back of the bed and a pillow and a sleeping bag, and that's it. And of course my bow, right? And that's basically it. And whatever clothes I'm going to wear, because all my food and all my eating necessities and all my water needs are all kind of in these 2 bags. And so I can just jump in the truck and take off and know that I'm covered for the trip. So this thing here it's actually something I really started using this year. I've used this stuff, for Western hunting, but this was the first year that I really used a go bag. I tried using bins in the past, but it was just taking up too much room and too clunky, and I don't have enough room in the bed of my truck. And so what I did was just like say, hey, I'm just going to start using go bags, because I can stuff these under the back seat of my truck. In the cab, it's, a 4-door quad, king cab or whatever the case is. So these fit nicely under the seat. It has everything I need. And then I know anytime I come back from a hunting trip, I just need to kind of double check what I have in this, whatever the rations look like, and then, refill them as needed. That way, when the next trip comes up in a week or 2 weeks from now, when the weather gets right, I need to make a quick run, that I'm not scrambling around to try to find all my stuff and getting to the place I want to get to late, so I can get there in a timely fashion, get some decent sleep. So these dry bags are awesome. And I would definitely pick a couple of those up. The last thing was something that I picked up last year, because I learned the hard way last year on a couple of particular hunts, where I usually carry like a Nalgene bottle with me when I'm hunting, right? And we had some temps last year that were in the negative for multiple days. And so I would be able to drink my water at the beginning of the hunt because it hadn't frozen yet. And by the time we got to noon, 1 o'clock, or whatever the case was, whatever amount of water was in my Nalgene bottle was now either frozen or was a slushy and about to be frozen. And so I actually got this from a tip from my good buddy Wilson, who I hunt with whenever I'm in Idaho, which is just basically like a Nalgene bottle insulator, right? And so when you're going to hit those harsh temperatures and you need to keep like either your water from freezing, which is what I use it for, or if you're taking something and you want to keep it warm, if you're not going to use a thermos, you can use this. But this thing is awesome and keeps, it's low profile, it's light, and it does the trick for me from keeping my water from getting frozen. So I'm not kind of, up a creek without a paddle while I'm sitting in a tree or sitting out in the timber, looking for a drink. So those are the things that I typically have in my truck. It's not everything I have in my truck, but these are some of the key pieces I have in my truck. So the next thing we're going to look at, I'm actually going to take you out to the truck, because there's 2 things I added this year to it as a way to hang some gear and organize some things that I want to quickly show you guys, but we'll have to walk out to the truck. So let's do that now. All right. So for the back of my truck, it's a little bit of a disaster because I just got back from the plains, but this is essentially how the back of my truck is set up. I'll go over a couple things. You can see my bino harness I was just showing you is there, right? I have a saddle hanging over there. My longbow is hung there. And then there's a couple sticks over there. There's some game bags over there. There's an EXO pack frame right there for carrying meat out. Here is my go bag that we were talking about. That's what has all my food and stuff in it to go. And there is the water bag I was telling you guys about. And I also carry always like just some recovery drink in here as well. how this all kind of works is there's these small clips, and I think these are super cool, man. Like there's some small companies that are making these, a couple different guys. I think these are 3D printed, but they basically just clip onto the back of your headrest. And I have two, that way I can hang my longbow across the back of it. And it really just keeps me from having to put my seats down to house gear, and I can fit more of the stuff in here that I need to fit, and always kind of have everything in here. Typically, I don't leave my bow in here overnight. I'll take my bow out. But I'll typically leave the binos hang in here, and I'll typically leave my harness hang in here, and I'll leave my saddle or my sticks in here, or an extra stick in here, or whatever the case is. And so there's one also over on that side as well. I don't think this will work for someone who's shooting a longbow that is, 58, 62, 64 inches. Mine's a 52-inch tactical, so it fits nicely back there. But it also works maybe even better when you have a compound, and I'll show you what that setup looks like here in 1 second. All right, so now we swap this out. Try to move back so you can see it a little bit better. But now we have, my Hoyt RX7 hung up in there where the longbow was. And so you can actually change the position on these things. I just threw a quick quiver on it just so it was a full setup or whatever the case is. But you can change like what hole. If you're using a Matthews, you're going to have smaller holes, etc. But you can move it, right, however you want to configure it. If you just want to hang it on this, a little lower to the ground, that's fine, right? I would probably hang this in this middle slot here and be good to go. I can even still keep my bino harness behind it because I'm using that really thin one, so it's not taking up any space. And now I have my bow on one side, my saddle on the other. I could even probably hang a really light pack. I'll go over my pack here in a second and what I'm using actually with that. But my pack, as light as it is now, I could absolutely hang it on that hook and be good to go. That way, whenever I'm getting ready to get my stuff, I'm just reaching in here, grabbing everything. Everything's going to be right at my hands. I don't have to go dig through a bunch of stuff. It's all up off the floor, and I can still use my floor space, for whatever I need to use it for, whether I'm going to take a cooler along or whether I'm going to take, a box of clothes along or whatever the case is. It just kind of keeps the back of my truck as organized as it can be. Because throughout the hunting season, it does start to turn into a little bit of a disaster.
All right. The next set of stuff that I use that I keep in my truck pretty much at all times during the hunting season. You're probably like, man, you got a lot of crap in your truck. And yes, I do, but it's because I like to just make sure I have my bases covered, and I don't want to have to pack the truck every time I want to go hunt and forget things and stuff like that. So I basically just pack it at mid-September, whenever things start for me in the area that I live in. And then it just stays there until I'm done with the season. And then I take everything out. So I mentioned the pack that I'll probably have hanging on that clip that I just showed you previously in the back of the truck. I'm hanging my bow and stuff like that in the back of the truck. I would also hang this pack because it's super light. There's hardly anything to it. I've gone through, using different packs. I've used, larger packs. I've used, the non-rigid packs that kind of flatten down and are like super soft and have fleece material and stuff on them. And I've used more, rigid packs that saddle companies make and stuff like that. They're very similar like Faru pack or whatever the case is. And what I've actually gone to that has been, at least for me, has been probably the biggest change in my setup for this year. And I was super stoked about it. I wasn't sure how it was going to work out, and I absolutely loved it. I don't think I'll ever go back to running a regular size pack because typically I'm always going to have to come out to the truck for something because I'm either hunting in an area that I'm going to need to pack something out. So I'm going to have to come back and get my freight pack and game bags and stuff like that. And so there's no use for me to take a bunch of stuff in like I'm going to dress an animal and do it all like one kind of fell swoop. And so with that, I stopped carrying like a larger pack and just started carrying this small pack. What this basically is just a saddle pack. I put some straps on it, and so it's a little bit more comfortable. I put a little like carabiner thing here. I don't think it's carabiner, it's like S-hook on it to hang it while I'm in the tree. I use a small platform, and inside here I'll have something that's like to put my knees up against on the tree. And so again, like we're not going to go over saddle gear. You get whatever platform you want to get. I'll have this in here and something to put up against the tree. Even like whenever I was out in the plains, I would put the small egg crate kind of like butt pad for glassing pad. I would carry that in here. I just wouldn't carry the platform. I've tossed the platform aside and I just put that in here. And then I would use this to kind of carry extra clothes. So if I'm really just ground hunting, I'm not stuffing an extra layer in here or something of that nature, as opposed to carrying the platform. So it worked out really well for me this year. You kind of clip it together here, it kind of keeps it from flapping around. The back of it, really, I just use the MOLLE attachments, and I put one kind of MOLLE pouch on it, and that carries my Nalgene bottle, right? So that's how I carry my water. The only thing is like I lost them, but I would take basically like a small Night Eyes gear tie, and I would gear tie these two kind of zippers together to make sure it didn't lose my other model while I was hiking. And then this is just another MOLLE pouch clip that I clipped on, and in here, what I basically keep is like, something to cover my feet if my feet get cold, some snacks, something to charge my phone in case it dies, and just like my license, just some odds and ends, a knife, some paracord, just like some odds and ends that I'm like anywhere on the timber, but it's not a ton of stuff. And then this compression strap is awesome because if I do need to put an extra layer of clothes in, a lot of times what I would do, especially if I was saddling and I had my platform in here, if I use the larger bag, and again, bunch of saddle companies sell the same type of pack, so you can get whatever one you fancy. But I typically get the larger pack, and then I use the smallest platform. That way I can kind of put the platform in here. I've got extra room to kind of stuff like a small light layer in here, whether it's like a puffy that I can ball up or whatever the case is. And if I need to take a jacket, so to speak, I can fold it up, ball it up, and I can kind of compression strap it to the back here. And then I can take 2 layers if I need to. And then my sticks, I just strap those to the bottom and carry them on the bottom of this pack. And this thing works for me. Keeps me super light, keeps me super mobile. I don't have a lot of stuff on me while I'm walking through the woods. So I felt like this year I was making a lot less noise than I had maybe in years past. But this setup has been absolutely awesome for me. I might change what I'm using here, but like this particular setup and format is going to be what I use in the foreseeable future. So that's kind of like my minimalist pack setup, and that's always in the truck, beginning of the season to the end. And I've used this all season, so it's gotten me through early season to mid-season. We're in late November, getting into December now, and I don't see why this thing won't work for me through late season as well. Now I'll plan to switch anything out. So the next thing is always keeping my truck. You're in the truck. You already have one kind of cell power bank. Yes, I do, but I always like to make sure I have enough power. And so I usually always just keep this in my truck. I think the brand's called Balder, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a 330 watt charger or battery bank. Also will charge with solar. And it's really just like my backup to backup. Like I'm a big, if you have one, you have none. If you have two, you have one guy. And so I'll carry this with me. Truth be told, a lot of times what I'll use it for is like, especially if I'm in the mountains and I'm hunting there and I might need to jump on and do some work. Like I'll use this to plug into Starlink and just set up and do some work there. Or I might be in an area where I need to make a phone call. And I'll keep Starlink just kind of laying in my truck, like the Starlink Mini, and I'll plug it in and I'll be able to turn that on, get some service, and be able to make a phone call to my wife or whatever the case is, or if I need to get a hold of someone to help me get a deer out or whatever the case is. And so I'll use this for that type of stuff, by and large, but it's very rare that I use it. But it's more of a safety precaution more than anything. And then the other thing that I keep in my truck all the time is an extra cell camera or two, or just truck camera in general or two. This is the Reveal Pro 3.0. And I always keep a couple extra solar panels in there as well. There's a port in my truck that when you lift up the floor mat, there's two kind of hidden compartments that go into the floor. And I typically keep like 2 or 3 trail cameras and 1 or 2 solar panels in there, along with some batteries. That way, if I'm out scouting somewhere, I find something that I run onto, that I'm going to put up a camera. Even if there isn't cell service, you can use these disconnected as well. A lot of places I hunt don't have cell service, so I'll still throw this up. Even if I'm not using that intel for this year, I'll still put it up if I find something really interesting, because I might want to look at that intel for the upcoming year. So that, by and large, baseline I showed you in the back of the truck, how it's kind of set up. This is, for the most part, the stuff that I kind of have in there all year. Probably seems like it's a lot. But none of this stuff is like a break the bank purchase necessarily. And I didn't get all this stuff at once. I just kind of accumulated it over time and started piecing it together how I wanted to use it. And this year, it really felt like I had the whole like truck not just my hunting gear, but like my travel plan, my planning for travel. Just felt like I had like everything dialed in and didn't really get somewhere and be like, oh man, I wish I had this thing. It was like, if I needed something, it was always in the truck and I always had access to it. So with that, we're going to move on to some, I think we'll do boots next. How's that? All right. I've worn a lot of different boots over the years and a lot of different socks. And no matter what boot I bought, it always seemed that either one or two things would happen, or usually two of two would always happen to me, which is that my feet would never stay warm and my feet eventually would get torched, like blistered up, hot spots and stuff like that, right? And so I finally found kind of like a system or boots that work for me for different types of things, and socks. So we'll go over this isn't earth shattering, but if I'm scouting and I have to pick one set of boots, and I've worn the Crispies, I've worn Canitrex, of course these are Zavalin's, and these are Lathrop and Sons. I've worn the cheaper kind of Cabela, version of boots. I've worn Mucks. I've worn other rubber boots, right? And bar none, the boot that fits my foot the best and that I've just had the most success with is the Lathrop and Son boots. Now they make a couple different versions of it. This is more like for mountain hiking. But they're just sized correctly. They feel good. They don't hurt my feet. They don't give me hot spots. So my main go-to boot is this boot, particularly if I'm scouting late season, if it's colder weather, if I'm going to be in rugged terrain, right? This boot just completely knocks it out of the park. I got the Synergy insoles, in these as well. So it's not that's not just like the stock insole that they come with. So I got the Synergy insoles, and they also have the insole, I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but it's the one that kind of warm your feet. Killer for late season. My Zonderlins, what I typically will wear those for is like early season when it's hot out, or if I'm in an area where I'm going to need to be doing more stalking, because these boots are pretty stiff, great for mountain hunting, great for scouting, great to take the pressure off of your feet. These are a little bit more pliable, right? And I can feel the ground underneath my feet a little bit better. And so I feel better stalking these. So if I'm in the plains, like I just was, unless it was really cold, which we have 3 days where the temperatures got really cold. When the temps got cold, I wore my Lathrop and Sons, and they're not insulated, but it's just, they fit my foot right to where I have a little bit more space, because the guys from Lathrop and Sons kind of taught me that you want a little bit of space in your boot to help keep your foot warm. That air needs the ability to circulate. I personally typically like to buy my boots kind of tight. I like them to almost fit like running shoes, if you will. And that's not necessarily the way you want boots to fit, but I can wear these in warmer weather and they do fit my foot more snug. And I get that kind of feel that I want in that warmer weather, kind of early season. And then whenever I get into more tough terrain and I get into colder temperatures, I switch to my Lathrop and Son boots. Now, one thing I will say is that I need to get a set of Synergy insoles for these boots, because I'm not using Synergy insoles in these boots. And my feet have been screaming at me basically ever since I got back, because I wore these predominantly on that plains hunt. And so that's the one thing that these need to be updated with. Also, they're comfortable, but they're not super waterproof. I would say they're water resistant. If you're going to be in some really wet climate, they don't do great. But if you're in dry climate, like the plains and so forth, they're awesome. These things here are airtight. Like I've walked through swamp, streams. As long as I don't get water up over the boot, like I'm golden. These things are tanks and work like they're supposed to. So those are the two boots that I buy. You go try some boots on, see what fits your foot, and get something that works for you. But if you're looking for a really good boot and you want to buy once, cry once, then Lathrop and Son, like great Christmas present. If you're going to get yourself one nice thing, then cold feet, sore feet, slow feet, don't eat. Right. And that's kind of like the name of the game when we're out hunting, right? You got to kind of be able to go when you need to go. And if your feet are barking at you or your feet are cold, or whatever the case is, your hunt's going to be over in short order. So the boot situation for socks, one of my go-tos, man, I just kind of stumbled on them. Like at that time I was wearing Canitrex boots and they killed my feet, but they were the lesser of the evils that I was dealing with at the time. But the one thing I found from Canitrex that I really liked was actually their socks. I use one of their soft liners as well. This one's just a little thicker. So like this one I typically will use, in the earlier part of the season, even getting down into like probably like the 50s or whatever. It's like I would wear this sock for the most part. If I need something just a little bit warmer, I typically go, and there's a bunch of different socks out there, but just what has worked for me. I've tried, all types of different brands. And what I just kind of always kept kind of going back to is these are Smart Wool socks. I'll wear these, when the temps get a little colder. I might want to try to stretch these out and maybe get into the 40s. If it's dry out, and I might be doing a lot of walking or whatever the case is, or I might be stocking, then I might throw these on, a little heavier sock. They're Smart Wool, and rock with these. That's, another set of socks I like to use. When it gets cold and I'm going to absolutely make the transition to wearing my lace up in sun boots, whenever I start to hit either really tough terrain or especially when it gets cold, when we're talking about socks, I might use a sock liner, like a really thin sock liner, but by and large, I'm just going to use a high loft Smart Wool sock. And that's what I used this year with my lace up in sun boots. And man, I was hunting some temperatures in the plains that were in the single digits, and I was solid. And truthfully, it's been the first time that I can remember that I was in that cold of temps and that my feet weren't the thing that was driving me crazy. In fact, I was actually golden on that hunt, and felt great all day. And so as far as socks go, if you're looking for stocking stuffers, man, Smart Wool is the way to go. If you're looking for some thinner soft liner type stuff, Counter-Strike makes good stuff. If you're looking for boots and you need a rock solid do it all boot, the Lace Up in Sun boots, or where it's at, you can give them a call and they'll size you, get you all custom set up and stuff like that. If you're looking for something that hunting drier climates, maybe you want something a little bit lighter, these Zomberlins, I've worn them for a couple of years and they've done me pretty well. I just wouldn't necessarily trust them for a full season. So with that, now let's go ahead and transition and take a look at a few key pieces of the apparel gear that kind of, are things that I can't do without.
All right. So now we're going to take a look at just some of the gear and apparel that I wear. You might ask, it shows you the pack, but what I mentioned was that I'll kind of strap stuff to it. And this is just more to demonstrate, the puffy jacket and how small it kind of packs. Now you can pack it down even smaller, but I'm a whatever I need to do to get it to fit guy, as opposed to how small can I get it guy. It just needs to work right for where I'm going to put it. So we'll start with this. So this is the Osio Gear puffy jacket. If it's not cold out and especially if I'm hiking in, I think when it get hot, it's I'll just strap it to the back of this, compression strap it, good to go. It's the Osio puffy jacket. It's killer. I'll typically just fold it into its own sleeve. Again, you can fold it a bunch of different ways. I think you can actually even fold it into its own pocket, but I'm more of a whatever works kind of guy. I just need to strap it on this. I'll fold it into its own sleeve and then place it here in between where I have a convenient spot, and then compression strap it to my pack. This thing is awesome, man. If you need one piece of gear that's going to be super versatile, you only want to buy one thing, I would highly recommend getting the Osio puffy jacket. I probably, outside of the super early season hunts, this thing is probably with me on almost any hunt, because if I put the right kind of base layer and mid layer on, I get to my tree or I get to wherever I'm going to glass or whatever the case is, and I start to get cold, this thing will typically get me to in the 40s, or low 50s, to where it's I can literally just have on a base layer in this, and I'm pretty good to go. It's so versatile. It does a really good job of kind of building into your layering system. The warmth to weight ratio is ridiculous. So it's super lightweight, which is why it goes with me almost anywhere. It's I don't like to, you can probably tell by the gear that I've kind of shared to this point, I don't like heavy stuff. I don't like to carry too much stuff. I like my truck to have a lot of stuff in it, right? I like that to be prepared. I like my base camp to have all my stuff that I'm going to possibly need. But when I go to the woods, I like to take as little as possible. Basically my bow, if I'm, saddle hunting, this pack, a saddle, and in my binos, and that's it, right? And whatever clothes I'm wearing, and if I need to take a layer, right? And that's it. I don't want to take more than that. And so I'll usually try to put on whatever it is base that I'm going to need to kind of get me close to comfort, right? And then I would just add this when I get cold to kind of reach, the place that I want to be in terms of temperature. Also does great, if you're going to wear a heavier jacket. I've used this often to kind of put under a heavier jacket. They make a vest version of this, which is killer. But if you're going to buy one item, that would kind of be with you through a multitude of the weeks of the season, this would be the jacket or the garment that I would absolutely get. It's reversible too, so you can reverse it and wear it out, and it's just like a black puffy. And so I can't speak highly enough of this. I've always liked puffies, and I've always worn puffies for years. It's always a staple of my kit. And this one is just bomb proof. So I would check that out if this one piece of gear that you're looking to get for this year. The other thing, this was just to kind of show again, like, whenever I'm using this pack and I'm just using a small platform and I have the larger pack, I can strap this to the outside, right? And I can put a layer inside. Now this is a base layer, but it's about as thick as a mid layer would be, because this is the heavy base layer. And so the reason why I wanted to show this was because, I think the hardest part of kind of layering things is, especially when it gets cold, that like there's not the layer is either too light or too heavy, right? At least what I've found, right? I've not found like a medium where it's like I usually have to put on like a medium layer, then a heavy layer, and that's my base layer, and then put my pants on, like, and you feel like the abominable snowman walking around. And so Osseo made this layering, this base layer kit, which is just awesome. It has a hood, comes in a couple different colors if I'm not mistaken. I got the gray one. Has a zipper front, merino wool. If it's not going to get crazy cold out, like there were a lot of hunts this year that were maybe going to be in like the 40s, where I'd maybe put on like a t-shirt base layer and then throw this on top of it. And there's been plenty of times where it's like I've literally just thrown this on with nothing else under it or over it, went to hunt and took this puffy, and when I got to where I was going to hunt, just threw this puffy on over top of this and was primo. This is probably, I know when Joe came out with this and I got my hands on it, I messaged him and told him like, this is probably one of my favorite pieces of gear. Aside from this, like the thing that's made the biggest difference in my layering kit or in my, whitetail apparel kit is these base layers that they came out with this year. So, and then the matching sets, the matching piece of that is the pants. And they're awesome. Like I can't speak highly enough of them. They have zippers on the side to get in and out of them easily, right? So there's been plenty of times, like for a great example is I was in the plains and we had days that you get up in the morning and it'd be like 25 degrees. And so it's cold in the mornings, but I didn't want to be all layered up. And so what I would do is I would basically put like a thin base layer on first. I would throw these on over top of it, right? And then I would throw these mid-weight pants, and we'll just kind of move to those. So heavy base layer, merino wool, Osseo gear, killer. So it would be light base layer, this merino wool heavy base layer, and then I would throw on these mid-weight pants that are made for like, so your ass doesn't get wet, your knees don't get wet, things are reinforced so you're not tearing the rear end out of your pants or tearing the knees out of your pants if you're spotting, stalking, crawling on the ground. And I would basically use that setup and I would wear these. And man, I was wearing these into like the 30s without having to change to like a heavier pant, because again, we're in the 20s in the morning. So I'm layering up with a thin layer, this heavy layer, and then these mid-weight pants, and I'm good to go. And I'm hunting in the morning and I might get back to the truck. So I'm going to do some glassing and drive to a different place. And when I get there, I just take these off, unzip these, put these back on over top of a light base layer, and I'm good to go for, the afternoon when it's going to be 60 degrees out. Right. And so I just felt like they knocked it out of the park with these couple garments that they brought out this year. And this of course is in their, Wrap X pattern. I've got the Raptor pattern as well, but I really, really love this Wrap X pattern. So the mid-weight pants were a no-brainer for me, like totally, my go-to pant. Like I wore these outside of early season where I wore the light kit. Like this was like the pair of pants that I wore pretty much every hunt this year. Awesome pants. They stand up to briars and just all the BS that I put them through. The other pair of pants that should be in your kit, if I were going to buy one pair of pants, because mid-weight pants, you can get away with getting some cheaper mid-weight pants. Like I've worn things that are just like off the rack from Walmart and stuff like that during the middle of the season, things like that, as long as I'm layering underneath correctly and stuff like that. So you can get away with some stuff that doesn't have to be, expensive or brand or whatever the case is. So if you were going to buy one pair of pants, just like if you were going to buy one jacket, I would buy this puffy. If you were going to get one pair of pants this year, I would get the Sherpa line pants from Osseo Gear. These things are awesome. This year they added in a zipper to be able to zip on and off over your boots. These things are so freaking warm. We had, a day while I was in the plains that was, it wasn't going to get out of, I think like the high was going to be 32 that day, but the wind, the real feel was going to be, in the mid to low 20s for the day. And you're on the ground, sitting on the ground, sucking when you're sitting on the ground, it's sucking the heat out of you. Windy, right? And so I wore these, I guess it was like 2 days in a row where the temps were really, really cold and really, really windy, with basically like a light base layer and then these, merino pants underneath of it, and threw these bad boys on and was good to go. Not very often have I been that warm and in that nasty of conditions, or that cold and windy of conditions. And these pants are just freaking awesome. So, and you can get away with wearing a lighter base layer and wearing them, a little earlier in the season and stuff like that. But if you're hunting in an area where it's cold a lot of the times, man, these pants are, I don't want to say they're game changers because everyone uses that word, but you won't be disappointed in these pants. Probably some of the warmest pants that I've been able to wear, that are light too. Like usually when you get warm pants, they're heavy, they're bulky, they're a pain in the ass to wear, and these just aren't. And so can't recommend these enough. So if you're going to get one pair of pants this year that need to kind of work in cold temps, mid to late season, like this is it. These base layers, if you're getting one jacket, I would do this puffy because it's so versatile. It'll be in your pack the entire season. So that is essentially it, man. That is not all my gear, but it's the gear that I thought I should highlight that are like critical pieces for me that I use almost on every single hunt, or they're on hunts most frequently. And then the gear that I have on my truck that's just kind of like my everyday carry to kind of keep like a mobile camp, if you will, which might be overkill for some people, but for me, I don't have a lot of time. My time is precious. And so when I do have a chance to go hunt, I want to be spending my time either getting to where I'm going to hunt, hunting, scouting, whatever the case is, and not packing. And so I typically have my mobile camp kind of in my truck, ready to roll, everything I'm going to need, potentially. That way, that's one less thing I'm having to think about, and my mind is focused on whatever the task is at hand while I'm in the woods, whether it's scouting or hunting. So hopefully you guys dug this episode. We'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Have a great holiday. Celebrate with family. Hopefully you get some time to get out in the timber. And as always, thank you all for listening.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible: Tacticam, Osseo Gear, Hawk Optics, Face Off E-Bikes, and Lathrop & Sons Boot Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.